It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. I am Fernando Martinez of Chaparral Pavers, your local landscaping paver company right here on the Central Coast. And I've got my partner here with me,
Jonathan Araya. Good day. How we doing?
Yeah, welcome. Glad you tuned in today for another awesome show where we give you, tips and advice on all things landscaping and hardscaping, and talk a little bit about projects that we were working on and give you kind of an inside, idea of what goes on in our day-to-day life as landscape contractors here on the Central Coast. So today, I want to talk about steps and drainage and what to do, some of these decisions that have to be made when you're doing hardscaping and when you have elevation changes and slopes and retaining walls. I mean, living here on the Central Coast, it's pretty rare that we come across a yard, Jonathan, that's completely flat. They're out there.
I think more so nowadays, we see a lot of track homes going in, Trilogy, Rice Ranch, where you have a lot more flat land that wasn't there before. You had more contour to a backyard. Now it's just, you get it leveled for the house, and then you get this yard that's flat.
Well, and they've gotten smaller too. So, yeah. And the good news is they're building again. The economy's back. Home builders and these developments aren't, stuck in no more homes going up. And so, and of course, even depending whether you live in that neighborhood and bought, and now you're starting to hear the construction again and the roofers and the framers.
But for a lot of the homes that have been around locally in the Orchid, Solvang, Buellton, San Luis Obispo area, they have even a tremendous amount of contour.
The Rio Grande, the very hilly. It's not, we're not talking San Francisco hills here, but it's still there's a lot of properties that have challenges, and even sometimes on new homes. And there's a couple developments that I'm thinking of in Banneberg Village over in the Lompoc area. There was some unfinished walls, like they build a retaining wall to kind of, and even in Rice Ranch where they have different levels of the homes, of the grading, and then maybe from between one house and another house, there's an elevation change, and you have to put, a wall up, or sometimes the builders will put the wall in, or other times you have to kind of finish it yourself or think about what to do. And so we're doing a job right now that I'm thinking of that we had to address a few of those issues all in one job. So I wanted to talk about one way that we addressed it with the boulders. So tell us about how we, you came to a conclusion to put in kind of like that little wall.
Well, last week we talked about walls and boulders and boulder walls and whatnot. I think for the project that we're on now, I think one of the biggest challenges has been we have water going away from the house at 1/4 inch per foot, but then we come across where we're coming into a wall. So
right up to that boulder wall.
Yeah, drainage is an issue because we don't want puddling or pooling in a certain area, especially on top or right next to pavers.
It's absolutely huge. I mean, you have to. I know we say it a lot on this show. Drainage is everything. Without it draining correctly or standing water, whatever you put on top it's not going to be worth anything, in my opinion, And so if you're taking on a project yourself, if you're hiring a contractor to do it, you have to consider the drainage. And it's actually one of the more challenging things to do, even for us. And we do it all the time. And there's just, when you get there, and it's a big slope, okay? Just like this job. It was a big slope coming down, and they had rock kind of in the area. There wasn't that big of an issue with drainage because of all that rock. But now that we've scraped it back, re-leveled it, we're putting down a big paver patio, and we're draining water away from the house, well, we ran into that slope area where we built the block wall. We had steps going up to get you change elevation to the other side. And now water's going to be encouraged to settle in on that area. So, you have to consider how you're going to address the drainage. Where's that water going to go? Now, okay, here's the thing, a classic example.
Here's the kicker with that regarding that project specifically. Anybody can create a bowl shape in the middle of some pavers and have all the water go right to the middle. But it's not usable space. That's the problem. You can't put a table right there because the different elevation changes. And I mean, that's one of the hardest things to address.
When you go to put a table and chairs and umbrella, you have to think, how am I going to use this patio? And is it going to be as usable with a bowl and this, drain grate and everything grading so that it would, slope down into that area and actually have the drain work? And we see it a lot of time with other contractors. We go and we see jobs, and that it is a valid way to get the drainage to work, and it is getting the water out of the area. But is it doing it in a way that's going to look good? It's going to be functional. You're going to feel good using that space, and I think it's better not to have the drains in the hardscaping if you can avoid it. If there is a way, and there usually is, 99% of the time, there's another way to address that.
I agree. And I think, so when we're giving you our advice on drainage, I think there's a couple of key components to consider when you're dealing with drainage. I think the first thing is, if you can do it, which is a lot of the times projects we're on, you're able to move water away from the house at least a 1/4 inch per foot. You'll get the occasional driveway, and this is really, this is the classic case here that I could think about is Arroyo Grande, Pismo Beach. You have driveways that go down into the homes.
Absolutely.
I think for that, you're kind of at a loss for trying to pull water away from the house. So I think with that, you need heavy drainage. You got to focus on that heavily.
If the road is higher than your house, you should be, it's imminent that you check, not only, and even if you have drainage, and again, we keep going back to this job, but if you don't test the drainage, check the outlets, make sure things aren't clogged, make sure things didn't get put in the way. Make sure a neighbor didn't go over there and put a boulder in front of your drain outlet that was draining out of the backyard, which actually has happened. But so what we do when we go to the job site, pretty simple test. You take the hose, and in our case, it was a sealed drain that had a rain gutter coming down. So we put the hose up into the rain gutter, turned it on, and we said, okay, let's simulate, let's say it's pouring rain right now. Water is going to be usually going into the drain as fast as you have a hose on full blast. So it's kind of like worst case scenario when you do that.
Sure.
And you're able to see, do my drains work? How fast is it running? Is it all cloudy and silty when the water's coming out? Is it not draining at all? Is the water's coming back over the rain gutter spout? And so it really analyzed that. And in this case, we found out the drain was not working. And if it was working very slow. And then we looked around for other drains and say, okay, well, we found a box drain that was inside a concrete walkway. And we took the lid off, and you can see kind of where the pipes are coming in or where they're going out in those drain boxes. And look in there. Do you see a lot of, leaves, debris, or sediment? Because dirt and silt can get through those grates. The grates are there to keep the big stuff out, branches and, bigger pieces of obstacles or things. But when you do drains, if you have bark around a drain, if you have landscaping around a drain, or if you just have dirt, which is kind of the worst case scenario, they can fill up, the silt can fill up. So you got to think about going out there, and it's kind of like cleaning your rain gutters. Who thinks about that, all the time? I don't, I'm a homeowner, you're a homeowner. How often do you clean your rain gutters,
Yeah, I don't think to clean them that often until there's an issue that's popped up. Oh man, now, my rain gutter's falling down because of all the weight of the water.
The weight of the water,
yeah. Exactly. So I think going back to what our tips are is, if you can, get the water away from the house at a 1/4 inch per foot. If not, address it with drains immediately. I think the second thing that Fernando said is very important is test. Test in the off season so you're ready when the rain does come.
And if you're hooking into that system, because generally speaking, if you have a drain system, most properties, a lot of them do, they already have drain systems existing. And then if you're taking on a new landscape project, that's the time. Check it out. See where everything's going. Do the testing with the hose before you tie into having a a system that's going to use that existing system. And I've made the mistake in the past. I've been doing this a long time, and over the years, no one's going to be perfect. You take assumptions. I had a client tell us for sure 100% that drain works. Every year the water drains out.
I can't tell you how many clients we've had tell us that.
Yes, because you think that it does. You haven't, but we installed a whole backyard and everything draining into these drains. But I'm talking retaining wall, giant big patio pavers, and all the yards sloping to a V. I had 3 drains set up to collect all that water in that backyard, and we hooked into the existing drain that we were told works, and I made the mistake of not testing it. It didn't work. And then when we had the rains, I got the phone call. I had to go over there with a sump pump and hook it up and turn it on with a hose and run the hose out to the street to get the water to go down until we could fix the existing drain that supposedly worked. So that was my mistake. I should have tested it. So, that's what I say. This show is kind of about, you can use our experience and past things that we've dealt with and test your drainage system, especially when you're taking on a new landscape project, and definitely before you tie in a new drain into an existing system and clean them out, make sure it's working. If it's not, find out why. And, that then whatever you do on top, whether it's flagstone, pavers, concrete, or even if you're just landscaping, decomposed granite, pathways, or you're putting in a little seating area, all these fun ideas and things that we love to do and are great, weekend projects or, a small project for a contractor or whatever. Drainage.
And one last thing to do with drainage and aesthetics is, do not put your drain in the middle of concrete. I really dislike that, because if anything does go wrong, you're going to have to cut that concrete out. You're going to have to break it. You're going to have to, reevaluate what's clogging up those pipes underneath.
Yeah.
It's just really hard. And if you can avoid that, again, that is, I feel like a great piece of advice if we could give any.
Yeah, for sure. And another advantage behind doing pavers versus concrete, and if you had an area where because sometimes you have no choice, you're just surrounded by walls or concrete, and there's just no other option. Rather than pouring concrete, if you do pavers and then there's an issue with the drain later, you can pull a few pavers up, fix the drain, and put the pavers back. So that's
a really good point.
Yeah,
really good point.
I just love them. So what I'd like to do is talk about pavers and the color choices and some of the option things that we...
Well, let's address the steps first, because I know you wanted to talk about steps today.
Yeah, let's do that.
And I think that's a great idea, because, there's not really a step per se that Airval manufactures right now. They use a wall and a cap, and then you have to kind of makeshift your own thing.
Yeah, the different sizes. The Morrow stones aren't quite the depth that you would want. And so it's a challenge to find good material and what to make steps out of. You're absolutely right.
And there's a lot of options nowadays. We found a really good option, but it's not a fix-all type option. We found those natural stone steps that are about 6 to 7 inches. They have some nice contour, texture on top, colors. But when we're combining that and we're in a corner like we are now, perfect scenario, we're in a corner. We don't want to go straight. We want more of a rounded look to it.
Exactly.
We kind of have to makeshift everything. And another thing we've run into is most of those caps are only 10 inches, if that, in depth. And your average step is at least 12 inches for it to feel right.
Yeah, you want to have at least 12 inches of depth in your step and no more than 8 inches in height. So to beat a code and to just feel right, everyday steps. When we walk on steps, you don't always think about it. And if the steps are done right and professional, it should feel completely normal and natural. And there's no reason you should think about a step or what that feels like, because we only think about steps when they feel strange to us. So they should all be the same, consistent height as you're walking up. So whether it's 7 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, somewhere in that range, you keep them all the same. If a step is too small, 2 inches, I've seen 1.5 to 2 inch steps, they're tripping hazards every time.
I agree.
It just doesn't feel.
I agree.
There's nothing good about that. And if you exceed 8 inches, it feels like it's too high, and it's actually out of code. Any building codes you can't exceed 8 inches. And if they're all the same, you stay within 6 to 8 inches, and you keep them all the steps the same height, you're going to be right on the money. And it's just going to be a matter of finding the correct materials. We're going to take a quick break and get our sponsors in here, and we will be right back. If you're thinking about putting in a new Pavers patio or a paver driveway, call Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. The best paver installer on the Central Coast. Check out their portfolio and customer reviews online. ILoveToComeHome.com. That's Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. And on the web, ILoveToComeHome.com. And we're back. Okay, so we were talking about steps and kind of the nuts and bolts of what it takes to, make steps and how to make that work and how things should look. So why don't you go ahead and chime in, Jonathan?
I think steps can be a little complex because you want it to look right. You don't want to have to bring out all the grouting tools and grout in between the caps or grout on a bullnose edge type thing.
Right.
So I think one of the things, the key dynamics when making steps is to think outside the box. I think there's no mistake in what kind of products you can use, and steps is always a situation where we're customizing something, right? Because there is not a one size fits all.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the materials that we have are that way. It's just like you're building a retaining wall. Here's the block. Here's the cap.
Yeah,
build it. But steps
are difficult, in my opinion. One of the other things that I think is the most important thing to consider when we're talking about steps is how far out do you need to be to get to the height that you expect to be at the end?
Yeah, it's a lot of math.
I mean, you got to look at the depth, you got to look at the height, the width. So on this particular job that we're on right now, where we're building steps on a corner in a 90 degree, and we're rounding off the outside edge.
Right.
It takes a lot of math because we have to make sure that we're calculating everything going up, everything going back, and everything going on the sides as well.
Yeah, and you don't want to end up with the last step not being the same. You get to get 7 inch, 7 inch, 7 inch, and then the last step's 4 inches or something.
It's not forgiving.
So you've got to, and then you may have to end up rebuilding the steps over again. And nobody wants to be in that position. It's not fun. So do your math, calculate it out, double check your math on the way up. And what we do is run string lines. So you can put a stake up at the top, you can run a string out, calculate exactly what the depth is, do your division. And that's how the height of the steps gets decided. Because if you have, say you have 3 steps and you've got 24 inches, miraculously, never happens that way.
No, never.
If you did, what have you got? 4 8-inch steps, right? So if every step is 8 inches, or no, wait, that's 32. See, I still have a hard time with
Maybe
the math.
You don't want to hire us
now. 3 steps, okay. 3 times 8 is 24. Hey, Fernando, wake up.
Yeah.
So, but it's, okay, but maybe it's 21 inches, and then you go 3 7-inch steps, and that's how you figure out how that actually determines what the height of the step is. A 7-inch step is going to give you 21 inches of rise, and a 8-inch step over 3 steps is going to give you 24 inches of rise.
And then the setback is the same mathematical equations, but you're going back instead of from bottom to top.
You try to keep, so if there's 3 steps and they're 12 inches deep each step, you're going to be 3 feet out from where the top of the step is. So make sure that makes sense. Make sure the elevation that works for that. And if it doesn't, there's other things you can do. You can either make the steps a little bit wider. You can, you don't want to go any narrower than the 12 inches on the depth. Also, another thing you could do, this kind of last thing I want to talk about steps that I want to go into a little bit more on color choices and patterns for pavers, but you can make like 2 steps, and then you can have a longer run. Like, let's say you've got 30 feet to get across, but you've only got 20. Let's say you got 24 inches to go.
That's a great point.
You can make 2 steps, You could make a 10-foot run, or you could have even 5 feet, entrance, and then you can do one more step right before. But again, so it's a lot of
there's that customization again. That's all it is.
Why they're difficult.
Steps are really difficult. They're not forgiving. If you mess up, people will be able to tell immediately.
Yeah. So let's switch gears here, and I want to talk about when you're doing a back patio or a flat work or a courtyard or even a walkway, and you're deciding on materials. You're saying, okay, well, DG is the most reasonable priced, but we're going to get the little grains of granite rocks. Maybe we've got wood floors in the house. If you say, oh, I'm going to go with concrete, it's going to crack, the color's going to fade. I don't know if I want, I want a nicer product. You decide to go with pavers. And then you're thinking about all the drainage, you address the steps, and you've got all these choices picked out and everything, you're ready to go. You still have to decide on the colors. Do you want a border? Are you going to do a certain pattern? For the pavers. So I want you to walk us through that, Jonathan, about the choice,
So you bring up a really good point. I think when we get to that stage in the project where it comes to deciding colors and designs, I think people are more concerned with color more than design personally. I don't get asked often, oh, well, what design are we going with?
Yeah, what pattern, right?
Yeah, I think more or less they ask me what color. I think the biggest drawback is they go with a safe color, beige, right? Something neutral, something a lot more forgiving. But I feel, in all honesty, and I tell them this, is there's really no way you can go wrong. Go crazy, add colors that you like into your landscaping. And I think that's the biggest advice. And sometimes I get pushback saying, I don't see how this color is going to work. I can think of one project we just had recently where, I chose 2 colors. I chose a sea canyon and a Cambria gold.
Right.
And in my mind, I visualized it. I visualized those 2 color combinations going great.
Describe the sea canyon color.
So the sea canyon is like you have kind of like a goldish red color with like some neutral tan in there, but you also get this really unique color that looks like a blue. Yeah. Like a really nice Mediterranean blue.
Yeah, it's kind of charcoal-y, charcoal blue, yeah.
So you get those 3 color combinations inside of that one paver. And each block is different in consistency to how much blue or how much gold it has. The Cambria gold, on the other hand, has a little bit of a lighter tinge of gray and tan mixed together with some red, which kind of gives it that goldish color between the tan and the gray. And it's a little more subtle than the sea
there's
canyon.
Nowhere near the amount of gray or blue in it.
Yeah, the sea canyon really pops. So I recommended going with a Cambria gold for the border, Magnum, which is the bigger size paver.
Right.
And then going with a Roman 111 on the inside and going sea canyon with the pattern on the inside. So the client didn't really specify too much whether she liked it or not. I could tell though that she wasn't crazy about it. So in my mind at this point, I'm thinking, oh no, I'm trying to nail it 99.9% of the time with the clients on color. And we had samples there. I showed her.
Right.
So she let me lead her blindfolded and just totally trusted me. I brought the pavers. I was worried the whole time. I lay them out for her. And to my surprise, even, I'm like, man, that looks good. Yeah. So I go get her, bring her back. She absolutely fell in love with the 2 colors combined like that. I mean, she was ecstatic.
Right.
And I think to myself, well, thank God in my mind, but realistically, I also fall back on there really isn't a mistake you can make with the color.
It's hard, yeah.
I mean, it's really, really hard, especially with the new 3-color blends Airval has coming out.
3-color blends there's so many things that tie in, and your eye does automatically look for something that's going to match, or at least be close or pull another color out. So if you have, like a cream brown color going, or maybe you have a cream color house with brown trim and we put it down, a dark brown paver, your eye is going to pull that out of there. And with that Sea Canyon color, when you put the Cambria gold border around there, you see it pulling that gold. The whole patio looks more golden because your eye's pulling that out, and then you're seeing some of the colors in the home in the paver, and it's really hard to make a mistake when you're choosing colors. So that's the fun part. All the nuts and bolts and drainage and grading and 1/4 inch per foot and all this stuff is, that's just construction mentality. But the fun part of the job is picking out the colors and seeing how everything flows together and mixing them. And that's one thing that I like about us and what we do is that we're not afraid to mix colors or change a different color border or use this pattern or that pattern. And okay, well, it causes extra cuts if we do this, or what if we turn on a 45-degree angle and create a bunch of cuts for ourselves. But if the job looks better, if that's what it takes to really make that client that much happier, I know I'm happier when I see it, and I know, and even when they're subtle, almost especially when they're subtle, when you see really good artwork, you don't notice everything right off the bat. You get like, oh yeah, it's a nice patio, and then you're hanging out or whatever, and you're barbecuing, and it's like, hey, there's no gray in this border, huh? It's like, yeah, no, it's a different paver. And then you start, wow, they took time to, turn this on a 45-degree angle. That shows a little craftsmanship, It's not just, anybody going there and laying the bricks all in a straight line or doing the same old, running bond pattern that you see, which is a classic, bricklaying.
One of my favorite things to do with pavers is to have a lot of curves in my design, is, not just having those straight lines. And it does take more work. Honestly, it does take more work to do a 45. It does take more work to do curves or a nice design or pockets for plants. I mean,
right.
A lot of that. And sometimes we do it and we just graciously just tell our clients, look, we're going to upgrade you at no cost. Careful. We don't want to give the house away. I don't want to tell everybody
Jonathan, come on.
to start. But if you act nice enough, but
that's right. Just for the nice clients.
Just for the nice clients. So
no, they're all good.
I think we take pride in our craftsmanship, and that's the thing is we want to make sure that this doesn't look like every other job. This has to look unique.
And you've already, just by choosing pavers, you're already not every other job. And then you take that to the next level with color choice. And then you take it up even another notch. And now you show some craftsmanship in the pattern and the angles and the borders and the cuts and the curves. And you put all that together, and now you've got something that, and the way we like to put it here at Chaparral is, you love it. You take something that you would like or be okay with, and that's how you get to love. And that's why we say you'll love to come home. It means everything to me as a businessman, as an owner, as a service provider here for clients on the Central Coast. If you can love your patio, you love your driveway, or because if it's draining right, if we got the colors right, we got the craftsmanship correct, we get everything set up, the steps feel good. It should just be natural. As you walk through your yard, if you feel hesitant in an area, if it doesn't feel right when you step, if you got the puddle, or for every time it rains, you're like, oh, we can't go there, or we can't use this part of the yard, or worse yet, it's potential flooding hazards, then that's not a good experience with your landscaping, and that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. This is your home, to feel comfortable. So that is just about all the time we have today. Thanks for tuning in to your edition of Patio Side Chats here with Chaparral Pavers. I am Fernando Martinez here with my partner, Jonathan Araya. You can catch us on the web at ilovetoComeHome.com. 805-588-6917 is the phone number, and also on Twitter at ilovetoComeHome. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks now. Bye-bye.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetocomehome.com to find out more or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chat here on KSMA.